South Carson City starts to make more sense when your life is not only centered around Carson City. Maybe your week pulls you to Gardnerville. Your family might be closer to Minden. Tahoe could be part of your weekends. Genoa might already be on your list.
Work, errands, outdoor access, school logistics, or a quieter rhythm may be pushing your search beyond the middle of town. That is when South Carson becomes more interesting. It may not have the same historic pull as the West Side. The decision also feels different from North Carson, where Reno access tends to drive the conversation.
South Carson works more like a bridge. You still have Carson City convenience, but your life can lean toward Carson Valley without fully leaving town. That balance is exactly why buyers need to understand this area before they choose a side of Carson City.
Today, we're going to go deeper in South Carson City. We're going to talk about the daily conveniences, valley access, home expectations, cost of living, South Carson Street redevelopment, and why this part of town may fit buyers who want Carson City with a wider lifestyle map.
Before we get too far, comment with the area that you're comparing Carson City against right now. Gardnerville, Minden, Genoa, Reno, Tahoe, or is it somewhere else? That answer usually tells us what problem you're really trying to solve.
Let's start with the biggest idea. South Carson's not just about where the home sits. It's about what direction life naturally moves. For some buyers, everything's important happens inside of Carson City. Another household may spend half his time heading south for work, family, recreation, services, or outdoor access.
Once that pattern shows up, the Southside becomes more logical. A home search gets easier when the location matches your real movement. South Carson gives certain buyers a way to stay connected to Carson City while keeping the Carson Valley side of life within reach. That can be appealing if you're comparing different versions of Northern Nevada.
Gardnerville may sound quieter, Minden can feel more valley-oriented, and Genoa has its own charm and setting. Tahoe access might matter if your weekends often point towards the mountains. The question is not which place sounds best in theory.
A better decision comes from asking where your actual week will function the best. South Carson can sit right in that middle ground. You might want the services and the familiarity of Carson City, but at that same time, your lifestyle might be asking for stronger access toward the valley. That overlap is where this area really earns its attention.
Now, South Carson does not usually create the same emotional reactions as West Carson. You may not be choosing it because of older architecture, historic streets, or classic downtown feel. That does not make it less valuable. It simply means the value shows up a little bit differently. Some buyers care more about function than character, and a home that makes daily life easier can become a better fit, and that looks more like a romantic online.
South Carson often appeals to people who think in practical terms. How quickly can I get where I need to go? Does this location simplify my week? Will I feel connected to the places I actually use? Can I reach Carson Valley without feeling like I moved too far out? Those questions matter more here than curb appeal alone.
A buyer who wants history may keep looking west. Someone who wants Reno access may lean north. The person who keeps comparing Carson City with Gardnerville, Minden, or Genoa should take South Carson City seriously. That is the difference. Now let's talk about your routine. A lot of buyers underestimate how much a normal week should influence your search. The showing appointments only last a short time. Home ownership lasts much longer.
After the excitement fades, you still have errands, appointments, commutes, groceries, family needs, hobbies, and weekend plans. South Carson can work well when those patterns point toward the southern side of the region. If your life already has a Carson Valley rhythm, this location might feel more natural than other parts of town. You might still want access to Carson City's shopping, restaurants, services, medical care, and daily convenience. At the same time, though, being positioned toward the valley can reduce that friction.
That is not always obvious when you're scrolling listings. The map may make everything feel really close, and living there is different. Small location choices can shape how easy or inconvenient your week feels. South Carson becomes more compelling when those small choices start to add up.
Now, home expectations deserve their own conversation. Buyers looking at South Carson should not expect every property to feel the same. Some homes might feel more residential and straightforward. Others might be connected to busier routes, services, or commercial corridors. Certain pockets might offer convenience that feels valuable, while another buyer might want more separation from activity.
That variety means that you need to evaluate the exact location, not just the general side of town. South Carson is not one simple label. A specific address can feel completely different on one road access, surrounding uses, traffic patterns, a lot layout, the age of the home, and how the property sits in relation to the corridor.
This is where buyers can get misled by photos. A nice interior does not tell you whether that location supports your life. The listing can show the kitchen, the bedrooms, and the backyard, but your real decision has to include the drive, the nearby services, the noise level, the access points, and the directions that you travel the most often. That is why South Carson City should be toured with your lifestyle in mind.
You're not just looking for a house. You're testing whether this part of town makes your routine easier. Now let's get into the South Carson Street itself. The corridor has been part of a broader redevelopment and improvement conversation in Carson City.
The South Carson Street project includes complete street improvements and utility infrastructure upgrades from 5th Street to the I-580 terminus at Appian Way. That matters because roads, sidewalks, utilities, access, and corridor improvements can change how an area functions over time.
Growth should not be treated like a guarantee of appreciation. No buyer should make a decision based only on the hope that future improvements will raise its value. A smarter approach might ask how investments in the infrastructure may affect convenience, access, service, movements, long-term usability. For South Carson, that is the right lens.
This is not just about what the area feels like today. Buyers should also understand where the city has focused planning attention and how that can shape the corridor over time. Carson City also identifies South Carson Street as redevelopment area number 2. That doesn't mean that every property nearby is automatically a great buy. It does mean the area has a planning and a redevelopment context that buyers really ought to know about.
When a city pays attention to a corridor, that conversation becomes broader than one individual home. You start looking at access, service, commercial activity, traffic flow, pedestrian improvements, infrastructure, and how the area may continue to function as Carson City continues to grow. That context can help buyers think more clearly.
100%. A home near an improving corridor might offer convenience. Another home might feel too close to activity for your taste. The same redevelopment energy that excites one buyer might make another person want more quiet. Neither reaction's wrong, but the point is to understand what those changes could mean for your lifestyle.
Now, let's talk about cost of living. South Carson should be evaluated through more than a monthly payment. If you're comparing Carson City with Gardnerville, Minden, Genoa, or Tahoe areas, the numbers can shift quickly. Home prices matter, taxes belong in the conversation, and commute patterns can change the real cost. Services and convenience affect how much time you spend driving.
Maintenance, insurance, utilities, and property conditions still need attention. It's not exciting, but a lower price somewhere else might not feel like savings if your daily life becomes a little bit harder. A more convenient location might justify itself if it reduces time, stress, and unnecessary movement.
South Carson is one of those areas where lifestyle and costs start to overlap. You may be comparing a quieter valley option with a more connected Carson City location. On paper, one property might look like a better deal after you factor in driving, services, access, and how often you need to be in Carson City. That answer might change.
That is why buyers should avoid making a decision from list price alone. The right home has to make sense financially and practically. Nevada's tax structure can also be really attractive for relocators. There's no individual state income tax, which matters for buyers coming from a higher tax state. That advantage can help Carson City stand out during a relocation search.
Still, no state income tax does not mean cost of living disappears. Property taxes, sales tax, insurance, utilities, maintenance, transportation costs all remain part of the ownership. For qualifying primary residents, Nevada has a 3% property tax cap structure that can help limit annual increases on your tax bill. Carson City's combined sales tax rate is listed at 7.6% for 2026.
Those details might not be the most exciting part of buying a home, but they help create a clearer picture. A buyer comparing Nevada communities should know what they're gaining, what they're still paying, and how each area fits the life that they're planning to live. South Carson often becomes a strong option when that full picture points toward balance.
Now, who should be paying attention to South Carson? Buyers who want Carson City but keep looking towards the valley should understand this area. Anyone comparing Gardnerville, Minden, Genoa, and Carson City needs to look Southside carefully. A household that wants daily convenience without feeling tied to the downtown core may find this location useful. Someone who likes outdoor access and quieter lifestyle, Matt may also see this as an appeal.
Work patterns can make South Carson more logical as well. If your schedule takes you south often, the location could save you time and reduce frustration. Families might appreciate being positioned between different parts of the region depending on their commitments. Move-up buyers might consider South Carson when they want more function, easier access, and maybe a less historic ownership experience than what they're going to get on the west side.
For the right investor, the corridor conversation may also be worth watching through the lens of service, access, long-term local demand. That said, South Carson will not be everyone's favorite. A buyer who wants historic charm may still feel more drawn to the west side of Carson City. Someone who travels to Reno constantly might find North Carson more practical.
Another person who's focused on value might compare East Carson or nearby communities before really making that decision. That's why this area breakdown matters. Every side of Carson City solves a different problem. South Carson's strength is the connection between town convenience and valley access. Trying to judge it by a west side charm misses the point.
Now, let's compare South Carson with Carson Valley more directly. Gardnerville, Minden, and Genoa each have their own lifestyle appeal. The valley can feel more open. Some buyers like the pace, others are drawn to the scenery, outdoor access, or a small town atmosphere. Carson City, on the other hand, may offer more immediate access to service, government office, medical care, shopping, and daily infrastructure.
South Carson sits between those two conversations. You might not want to fully move into the valley. You might also feel like Central Carson is not quite aligned with your routine. That middle position can be valuable. It gives buyers a way to stay connected to Carson City while keeping the southern side of their life just a little bit easier.
That decision becomes less about which place sounds better and more about how you actually spend your time. If your week is centered in Carson City, moving further south may create unnecessary driving. When your life already points towards the valley, South Carson can feel like a practical compromise.
Totally. For some buyers, compromise sounds negative. In reality, in real estate, the right compromise can be the smartest choice. You're rarely choosing one perfect thing. Most buyers are balancing price, location, home style, commute, space, condition, convenience, taxes, and their long-term plans.
South Carson may not win every category. It may win the category that matters most in your life. And that's what we need to help you figure out before you start touring homes.
Around this point, I want you to comment with the direction that your life points most often. North toward Reno, south toward Gardnerville and Minden, west toward downtown and the historic part of Carson City, or east towards value and practical access. Your answer will probably tell you which areas deserve the deepest look. Now, let's talk about future growth without overselling it.
Buyers love hearing about upcoming improvements, but the conversation needs to stay grounded. A redevelopment area corridor project can influence how an area functions. It can improve your infrastructure, make access easier, support services, or change the way people experience a part of town. And that really is useful information. It is not a promise.
You should not buy in South Carson only because something might look different years from now. Your decision should still work based on the home, the location, the price, and your current lifestyle, and what's happening around there right now. Future growth becomes just a bonus when that property already makes sense. And that is the safest way to think about it.
If South Carson City already fits your routine, your corridor improvements may strengthen your confidence. If the home does not work for your life today, redevelopment talk should not be used to force that decision. Good real estate strategy stays honest about that. Now, from a seller's perspective, South Carson has a story that should be explained clearly.
A property here should not be marketed only by bedroom count, square footage, and finishes. The location's connection to Carson Valley matters a lot. South Carson Street improvements belong in the broader context as well. Convenience, access, services, and long-term positioning can help buyers understand why the area really deserves their attention. If the home is close to useful amenities, that also should be part of the story.
When a property offers a smoother routine for someone who moves between Carson City and the Valley, that marketing should make that clear. Buyers from outside the area may not understand the difference between South Carson and other parts of town. A strong listing presentation helps them see how the location actually functions.
That matters even more in a market where people are comparing Carson City with Reno, Tahoe, Gardnerville, Minden, Genoa, and with Dayton. The seller who tells the clearest story often gives potential buyers the most confidence.
For buyers, the same idea works in reverse. Do not tour South Carson only with the lens of the house. Ask what location gives you. Does it reduce your driving? Will it keep you close enough to Carson City services? Can it support your connection to the valley and nearby improvements useful for your lifestyle? Does the area feel right after you think past the showing? The questions will help you understand whether South Carson is actually a fit.
Now, let's bring back the larger Carson City series. West Carson is the character conversation. North Carson is convenience conversation for people who move toward Reno. South Carson is the bridge between Carson City and Carson Valley. East Carson will bring a different discussion around value, function, and around practical trade-offs. Each one of these sections has a distinct role.
That is why buyers should not treat Carson City like one simple market. The city changes depending on what direction your life moves. South Carson deserves attention because it gives certain buyers a specific kind of balance.
You can stay connected to Carson City. Your access toward the valley could feel easier. Daily services remain part of the equation, and future corridor improvements, they just add another layer to consider. For the right person, that combination can be a lot more useful for their everyday life than historic charm or a perfect lifestyle photo.
Before you decide whether Carson City belongs on your list, walk through a normal week in your mind. Think about where you drive, consider how often you need Carson City services, look at your relationship with Gardnerville, Minden, Genoa, and Tahoe access. Compare taxes, monthly payments, commute, service, and home condition all together.
Pay attention to whether future growth feels helpful or if it's going to end up feeling too active for your taste. You gotta be honest about whether you want quiet, convenience, access, or just a little bit of all three. Once you answer those questions, South Carson becomes a lot easier to understand. You may realize that it solves the exact problem that your search has been circling.
Another area may still fit better, and that is useful to know too. The goal is not to force every buyer into one part of town. The goal is to choose the side of Carson City that supports the way you're actually going to live.
South Carson can be a strong fit for buyers who want that town and valley connection. It may not be the most romantic option, but for some people, it'll be the most practical one. And when you're choosing a home, that can be the better decision.
I'm Jill Larson with the Larson Miller Group.
And I'm Marette Miller. And we help buyers, sellers, move-up homeowners, and investors make confident real estate decisions throughout Carson City, Carson Valley, and all of Northern Nevada. If you might be comparing South Carson with Gardnerville, Minden, Genoa, West Carson, North Carson, or even Tahoe adjacent options, reach out. We can talk about which area fits your lifestyle, your budget, and your long-term plans. Subscribe for your next Carson City area breakdown, because each side of town tells a different story once you understand how people actually live there.